Welcome everybody to another episode of Roundtable Rundown. Here at Roundtable IO, I'm Josh Valdez. This is Joey Mistretta. We both cover baseball for Roundtable IO, and we do other sports for other outlets as well. But we wanted to sort of go over the happenings in the MLB offseason so far. Um, it was kind of quiet, to be honest, until Alex Bregman signed a big deal with the Cubs. Obviously, Pete Alonso went to the Orioles way earlier in the offseason, but recent weeks there wasn't a lot of huge moves until that big domino finally fell with Alex to the Cubs, leaving the Red Sox, who he played for last season. So, Joey, what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it has been a quiet offseason for the most part. I think looking at that, it was surprising. I mean, I thought Bregman was going to go back to Boston, honestly, and then Chicago came out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but to an extent, and brought him in. They've had a good offseason. They brought in Edward Cabrera via trade as well. So, um, Cubs are making noise.
Yeah, the Cubs are kind of one of the main players right now because I saw some rumors that I think the Yankees and maybe somebody else was interested in Nico Horner, but I also saw that the Cubs might want to keep him, hold on to him since he's a pretty um promising player in general. So it's interesting. Obviously they had PCA, Suzuki. They have a few guys there that are worth building around. And now adding Bregman to that, you got a 5-year deal, right? You know they already were a big player in the NL without Bregman, so that should be really solid for them.
Yeah, no, and I think with Bregman too, it's more than just the talent. I think you talk about leadership. He's a World Series champion. He he knows what it takes to get the job done in the playoffs, and that's the biggest thing. This Cubs squad, they have some young talent. You got to get guys who know how to win. And Bregman, I know he's had some ups and downs with the Astros and everything and all that scandal stuff, but in terms of knowing how to win, he does. And I think that's the biggest thing the Cubs needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect way to say it because I mean, even just with Boston last season, they didn't have a ton of offense, but he was just a really reliable guy for them. He always puts a lot of pressure on the opposing pitchers, and he's just kind of a complete player. Like he can do a little bit of everything. Like he's not the biggest power hitter in the game, but he can go yard and he can run. He can field at third. Which is one of the hardest positions. So just a really valuable player, just a really excellent ball player, and for Boston to just kind of let him walk like that, it's. I saw, there's been a lot of, people in the baseball industry that are like the Red Sox are not behaving like a big market team. I think you and I have talked about this, Joey, where like, both the Red Sox and Yankees have been kind of timid so far. The Yankees are in more rumors, but the Red Sox are just, I don't know. It seems like they're letting things pass by them now. I don't know why they are, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you talk about Boston, and they should be pursuing these big guys, and they have been linked to Bo Bichette, so that would be a good acquisition to replace Bregman. They were interested in bringing back Bregman. I think the Cubs made an offer that was like 10 to 20 million more than them, if I remember correctly. So there was interest there, just didn't happen. The thing about it is, all the players in Boston, they just continue to talk about how much of a leader Bregman was, and it's really going to hurt their clubhouse dynamic losing him. That's going to be a big blow. So hopefully they can go out and get a Bichette or a Tucker or someone. Because if they don't, even though they have acquired Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras, they still need more to compete in that very, very competitive AL East division.
yeah, they're one of those teams that have made like the mid-level moves, but not the big fish yet, and they just lost a big fish. So that makes it even worse. Sorry, let me put do not disturb. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, I think, like we said, without Bregman even on the team that going forward, and their offense wasn't that great anyway. And yeah, they did add a couple guys, like you said, but um, if they hope to compete this season, especially, which you should when you have somebody like Crochet, one of the best pitchers in the game, you have some young talented guys on offense, right? But I think that I just don't see them being, a real threat to win the division if they don't make any big moves going forward. If they have Bichette, it'll be more convincing. Would help make up for losing Bregman for sure. But Bichette's kind of one of those guys that's still up in the air, right? Kyle Tucker, like you mentioned as well. Cody Bellinger. A lot of guys are still up in the air, right? So I don't know, like what's kind of your prediction with how these things shake out with all those guys, and where do you see them best fitting?
No, it's the question everyone's asking. It's tough because like with Bregman, I don't think anybody would have said the Cubs, and yet here we are. So the thing about if they bring in Bichette, not only does that make your team better, but it makes that team from Toronto a little bit worse, which is huge because the Blue Jays are so dang good right now. I look at Bichette, and I still do think the Yankees are a team that are gonna make that move. And there's been talks that Bellinger won't be returning to New York. So the Yankees, they're going to go all in on somebody. So if you're asking me my predictions, I'm going to say Bichette Yankees, give me Kyle Tucker to Toronto, and then Bichette is where it gets pretty interesting as well. Or excuse me, Bellinger's where it gets interesting. I mean, I could see the Angels, but it's just like if he goes to the Angels, then it's like that team just does not know how to win,
Yeah,
and they have a habit of giving guys who are approaching 30 big contracts that don't work out. Look at Anthony Rendon. So I'll
yeah.
say Angels, but I'm not saying I love that move if that happens.
The thing with Bellinger is the Yankees offered him, I want to say something like 5 years, 165 million around that. But, his agent is Scott Boris, and he's well known for, squeezing every dollar he can, which is his job, but I think this time it's a little too much because they want 7 years. And he's already, like 30, 31. I don't know. I think it's too rich for Bellinger. Yeah, you're right. It seemed like the Angels could pay that just because they're not like a well-run organization. But um, I think I'm skeptical that he gets a 7-year deal from a team that is going to be competitive next season. I'll say that. So that's why it's hard to predict because I feel like, they might cave like to the Yankees offer or basically a team that is like a competitive team's offer, whether it's the Yankees or someone else, to the 5-year deal that is a little bit more reasonable, for both sides. But um, if he and Boris just stick to that 7 years hard line, then yeah, it's gonna have to be somebody like the Angels or the Marlins or something that just needs some juice.
Yeah, so somebody, maybe the Giants. I could see San Francisco getting in there. Just a team that needs an outfielder. He's versatile. He can play any outfield position. 7 years, it's not a crazy ask, but he's just been so inconsistent. It's tough to say, okay, if I'm the Yankees, 7 years, that's a tough commitment to make for sure.
Yeah, and the Yankees apparently like offered it with like zero money deferred, which is like a great offer. I mean, we always talk about Otani's deal. It's like the whole thing is deferred. So, I mean, they offered it all like upfront, not upfront, but like over those 5 years, he gets all the money. And it was like over 150 million. But yeah, it's a weird one with Bellinger because he's not like he's a good player, but like you said, he's not like the greatest player in the game. Like to sign a guy, can guaranteed until he's like 39 is a tough sell. Yeah, like some people like some people are good when they're approaching 40, but it's a risky bet to make in general. So um I definitely could see the Yankees going all in for Bichette if they do miss out on Bellinger re-signing. I think that uh, Tucker is another one where he could be like a backup plan for the Yankees if Bellinger doesn't come through, but I feel like Tucker and Bellinger are kind of like intertwined. Like whatever happens with the other one is kind of the same contract the other one's gonna want, because like they're always trying to meet the market. So I don't know. It's so hard to predict because I feel like these dominoes it's kind of like a stalemate.
Well, I think on paper, Tucker should get a better contract than Bellinger. I mean, Tucker, he's so underrated. He's one of the best players in the game. Um, I think Bellinger's waiting on Tucker to kind of set that market, and then if Tucker gets a 8 to 10 year contract, that gives Boris more leverage to say, well, okay, you got 8 to 10, give my client 7 years. That's what I would do if I was Bellinger and Boris. But we'll see what Tucker does because he might settle for a shorter term deal with a higher AAV. I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the Cubs just made a big signing with Bregman. Tucker kind of had a tough season with the Cubs. It wasn't his best work, but historically, he's one of the best outfielders in the game, right? So, I mean, within the current crop of players. So, I don't know if the Cubs like would try to bring him back on a smaller deal, like you said, just like so that they don't lock him in case he keeps struggling to like a huge mega deal. But it depends on what Tucker's camp wants. It's sort of like, do we want to like make a bet like that where we get like higher AAV over a shorter time and then like try to go for a big one again later, or do we just want to settle it now? For the rest of his career mostly and just have a big long-term one. It's kind of like up to them. But yeah, I guess if Tucker does sign a shorter deal, then Bellinger and Boris will have less leverage, right? Because then it's like, oh, well, we don't want a shorter deal. We want 7. So that's not going to work.
That's a great point. That's why I think Tucker is going to set the market, and he will probably get a longer deal. But yeah, in the event it's a short-term deal, that would be a problem for Mr. Scott Boris and Cody Bellinger for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and then with Bichette, I think if he went to another team in the AL East, that would be massive. I mean, just because the Jays almost just won the World Series. Uh, you know, I mean, Bichette was pretty much hurt for the playoffs, so they could like make it back without him. But he was a key player for them in the regular season. He has been for years. He's one of the best shortstops in the game. I mean, he probably would not play short for like the entirety of his next contract just because he is getting a little older. He's been through some injuries. But going back to the Yankees again, right? They just brought back Anthony Volpe on a 1 year arbitration deal. I don't think he's going to be their guy for the future, right? If you can get Bichette off the Jays, I mean the team that just kicked you out of the playoffs, that could be huge, right? Or if he goes to Boston, right? Like plays third, to replace Alex, that could be huge. But again, is Boston going to behave like a big market team? As quiet as the offseason has been for the Yankees, I think have more faith in them than the Red Sox to like do something big right now.
Yeah, and there was a report that said he was willing to move to second base for his next deal on Bichette, so that's huge. I think if he goes to New York, the Yankees could keep Volpe. He's a young player, and you could just put um, uh, Bichette over at second base and maybe either trade Jazz Chisholm or move him to third base and trade Ryan McMahon. Like there's a lot of options there. With the Red Sox, it's tough. Is Trevor Story their guy of the future? Do you bring in Bichette and put him at second base? That's a tough one. You could move somebody to third base. But yeah, no, if he leaves the Blue Jays, that would really make the dynamic interesting in the AL East.
Yeah, I mean, of course he says, oh, I want to come back, but they say that, but talk is cheap, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's got to try to cash in. This is probably Bichette's last chance to get like a big deal, right? So, I don't think he's going to give Toronto a super big hometown discount. Um, you know, uh, if it is within the AL East, I think it won't be on par with like uh Alonso going to the Orioles just because I think he just is a better hitter and has more time, has more prime years going forward. I think that Bichette is a better contact hitter, but Alonso's power, especially in Baltimore, is just going to be huge. I think it'll be like just below that though. Just if Bo's able to keep that bat up and keep playing good defense wherever it is he ends up in the infield. Um, I think it would be like the B move to the Alonso A move, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Bichette's a stud. Like he is such a good. I don't know. It's tough. But yeah, from a power standpoint, Pete has just huge power. I do like Bichette. He's a little younger, and if you move him to second base, he instantly becomes one of the best second basemen in all of baseball. He's not a great defensive shortstop. He's not bad, I don't think, but he's not a great defensive shortstop. But put him at second base. I don't know. That's a tough one. But yeah, either guy, great players. It's a tough call for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I said before, like, I mean, and it's not that Alonso has more prime years. I just think he has more years ahead of being a power guy. But yeah, Bichette is younger. It's just that, like, it's like, what do you value more? Like, which skill do you want more? Because they're very different players, So it kind of depends on what you want. But um, yeah, it's interesting because Bichette could also leave the AL East entirely, right? And I don't know. It just seems like something that I feel like a lot of teams are sort of just like they're waiting, feeling out, trying to get the best deal they can. But at the same time, spring training is not that far away. It starts like the end of February, right? So like they can't keep like stalemating forever. At some point, and over the next couple of weeks, I think we're gonna keep seeing some pretty big moves happen here with these guys. You don't want to go into like spring training and still not know what you're doing on like on the macro level. You can make minor moves, but if you had to like guess when these dominoes are gonna fall, what would you guess?
It's always tough in free agency. Like some of these guys sign early. Like you remember Shohei when he signed, it was pretty early in free agency. Some guys wait till spring training. I do think the biggest names tend to sign during the off season. So I'd expect these guys, these top name guys we're talking about, to sign here within the next couple weeks. I do think Bellinger could take the longest as he waits for the market to kind of come to what he wants. But I would guess, late January, mid January, hopefully early February at the latest, because then pitchers and catchers report in mid February, and then that's always tough. So I'll say mid to late January, but you never know with free agency. There's no deadline, so it's tough for sure.
No, that's a good guess. And I think something we can definitely guess is that the Twins aren't getting any of these guys the way they're behaving. They just changed their like ownership structure basically, where they kind of sold like well about like 20% of their team to like three different minority ownership groups. But basically, they're trying to get out of debt and all this stuff, and they have a small budget, right? They've used part of it to sign Josh Bell, who's a first baseman slash DH. He played for the Nationals last season. But other than that, it's their only like important move. I mean, they've got a couple other backups, but um, we were going to talk about how they haven't traded Joe Ryan and Byron Buxton. It seems like they want to keep them. Both of those guys are going to be in the World Baseball Classic now. They just announced Buxton. Both great players to have on your team, but you want to do something before they run out of their contract, right? You don't want those guys to walk it's just like what just happened with the Sox with Alex Bregman, right? I mean, they only had him for 1 year, but the point is that you don't want star level players to walk for nothing, right? And so, are you going to trade them and rebuild? Are you going to keep them and build around them? You got to make a decision. It seems like they're in the middle right now. They just changed their owners somewhat. They don't really know what they want to do yet.
Yeah, the Twins are a disaster in my opinion. They're according to MLB.com's power rankings, they were ranked 25th, the one that came out I think last week, which a team that is that low and you have these superstar or maybe not okay, star players like Joe Ryan and Buxton. The thing about it is those guys aren't part of the young core. Ryan's going to be 30 in June. Buxton recently turned 32. They're both coming off really big seasons, like two of the best seasons of their careers. Why wouldn't you trade these guys now? Because you're not going to compete. You think about the AL Central. Okay, maybe it's winnable if Skubal gets traded and the Guardians don't figure things out offensively. But even if you win the division, you're not going to make the World Series. The AL East is stacked. The Mariners are a good team out in the AL West. It just doesn't really make sense to me. It's giving off Angels vibes to me, where you have really good players, but you're not doing the common sense thing and either rebuilding or going all in. Because if you don't trade them, then go all in and go and trade for a couple stars or sign a couple stars. But right now, they're kind of just in that middle ground where they won't be the worst team in baseball next year, but the chances of them competing are, I think, pretty slim. Now, maybe they'll prove me wrong. I don't know. But you look at the Twins, there's not a lot to love about it. The bullpen is questionable. Starting rotation is not ideal, besides Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. Offensively, Royce Lewis is always injured. If he can stay healthy, he's a star. Buxton's a star, but not a fan of this Twins team. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts as well about this.
Moral of the story: don't be like the LA Angels. Right? It's kind of what they're doing. I mean, right? It's like the Angels had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. They still have Trout, but it's they lost Ohtani for nothing in return, and it's just like one of the worst things ever in baseball history for any team. One of the this guy could be go down as the GOAT, and you let him walk for nothing, not even a trade. Obviously the Twins aren't going to be on that level, but the point stands that you don't want to just have these guys have great seasons on a team that's not a winning team, and then they end up walking. Obviously, Byron said that, oh, I want to stay, but they always say that again. Talk is cheap, right? Yeah, at the end of the day, does he have a reason to stay? Unless he just loves Minnesota so much. But I think a lot of this is wanting to sell tickets. It's especially because they just changed their ownership somewhat. They also, you know, they are coming off a couple not great seasons, right? They're trying to get out of debt. I wrote an article before how they were in debt because from COVID, they paid a lot of their staff still during COVID when there was no fans coming. They didn't have that revenue coming in, and then they had not good seasons after that. Uh, Correa didn't work out with them. They ended up trading him last season. So it's just been like one bad thing after another for the Twins. And I think honestly, they just kind of want to sell tickets with Buxton and Ryan on the team, give the fans somewhat intrigue, try to get it in a better financial place. And then maybe they'll trade them like next offseason or something. I just think that this has to be like some kind of, I don't know this for a fact, by the way, but it just looks like some kind of ownership wanting to sell tickets sort of deal for a team that has had issue in that department ever since the pandemic.
That's what I don't get is like you trade Correa, who's probably the biggest draw of them all, and that's like a rebuilding move. Then they entered this offseason with everybody in the MLB world saying, okay, Ryan's probably going to get traded, Buxton might get traded. And then midway through the offseason, there's that report, which I don't remember the source right now, that said they're not going to trade the guys. And I just don't get it. So you might be right about the ticket thing. Like maybe that's it. But even if that's true, then it's like, well, why trade Correa if that's all you care about? So it's a difficult time for the Twins, and we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, it reeks of indecision. Like I think they wanted to trade Correa because, on one hand they wanted to rebuild, but then also they're like, oh wait, I don't know, but I also want to keep some of the guys so we can still sell some tickets. Because then it's like if you end up like the White Sox have been recently, it's really brutal. Or like the A's. Although now the A's rebuild is actually kind of going now with some of the young talent, but for a while there it was pretty bad. So. I think teams are scared to just take the full plunge and just go like we're gonna win 40 games the whole year, like kind of like the Rockies have been, recently. Like it's just hard to stomach that. Like fans aren't gonna come, like it's gonna be hard business wise to sell yourself. But sometimes you have to be terrible before you can be great, right? And it's just being a no man's land just doesn't really help. If you can sell these guys now for a huge, heap of prospects that can help you rise out from mediocrity, then that could be huge for them. But, I think at this point in the offseason, I'd be surprised if either of them gets traded now. It just seems like, I don't know. I feel like the window might have, it's not totally passed, but it's just hard to see them like suddenly all of a sudden, okay, we're going to start a full rebuild like towards like when there's only 30% of the offseason left. Like that would be weird.
Yeah. No, I think you made a great point with the A's. They've done a great job, in my opinion, in that department because they know they're a smaller market team and they wanted to rebuild. So they traded their stars away. You trade guys like Olson away, like superstars, and they've really built this young core of guys now. And all of a sudden, they're a pretty exciting team. So I'd rather do that, like do that plunge and go all the way down and then build up, than be in that mediocrity lane because mediocrity doesn't lead you anywhere. But if you can rebuild, if you're the Dodgers, it's different. Huge market, you can just go and buy everybody. But for like the A's or whoever, go and rebuild, build up a young core, sign them to extensions, and that's kind of how you got to win. And the Twins just aren't doing that.
Yeah, the A's, they're doing a good job. They've got I mean, Nick Kurtz, like we say, right? Jacob Wilson. I mean, some of the brightest young stars in the game now. And that's really great for them, right? They also have Rooker as well. They signed him to an extension, so uh, things are looking bright for them, and because they have a long timeline. These guys, young guys, signed for a while, right? Um, the Twins, it's just weird. It's like, what's your timeline, right? And I think for a team that's like changing its ownership structure, a lot of things are kind of like in flux and they might be disorganized up top. But until you get organized and on the same page upstairs, it's not going to work downstairs. I think it's the same for any sport. So, uh, I think, yeah, the Twins are definitely not, don't have the greatest outlook right now. But in general, before we sign off here, who has your kind of favorite outlook besides LA? They're too easy, but uh, the not the Angels. Dodgers, by the way, LA Dodgers. They're like the obvious, like, okay, they're the best team. But besides them, who has your favorite outlook based on what's happened in the offseason and just recently?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. I think you look at the Orioles, what they've done, really exciting. The Phillies are always going to be there. The Braves have had a nice little bounce back off season. But for me, the team that I'm just thrilled about, I'm excited to watch is the Toronto Blue Jays. And if they can go get a Kyle Tucker or a Bo Bichette or somebody, or bring back Bichette, that is, even more exciting. But even as they currently stand, that team is absolutely stacked. You build around Vladdy Guerrero Jr., and the rest of the pieces have just come along. The starting rotation looks good. The bullpen's good enough. The offense is going to hit. That team is very dangerous, and they're building a dynasty potential. Not a dynasty, but a team that can compete for years to come potentially. And I love that. Like, you're not just trying to win for 1 or 2 seasons. Like, this Blue Jays squad, they could be really good for the next 5 years. So hopefully nobody gets hurt. They stay healthy. And that's kind of the team I have my eye on this year.
Yeah, I'll stay in the AL East and I'll go with those because kind of for the same reasons you said, but I feel like the Jays, they're really good, but they still need to do something big, like either re-sign Bichette or get Tucker, like you said, or somebody else, like to have that stamp. Like, okay, like we were already good, but now like we're going back to the World Series. Like, like um, I think with the O's, it's just exciting that, this team has had a developing young core for a while now, like, centered around Gunner, right, at short, but um, now they got Alonso and Taylor Ward from the Angels, right? They got some pitchers as well because they didn't have great pitching last season. So I think it's exciting for them that they've just announced themselves as big players in the AL East. Right? It's just kind of a new era for them. It's a new coach, right? So um, I think that they are exciting and I definitely predict them to not only be back in the playoffs, but I think they'll win their first like playoff series, at least the wild card. I think they'll at least get to the ALDS for the first time in a long time. Um, so actually, no, they were in the ALDS recently, but um, I think they'll win playoff games for the first time in a long time. Is what I mean. Because yeah, they've got to the playoffs recently, but they got swept each time. So I think they'll make the ALDS and maybe even the ALCS. So I think that, think times in Baltimore are definitely looking up, and I'm excited for them to kind of experience that rise.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the one thing with the O's is just give me one more starter. Go and sign Fromber or Ranger. But yeah, the offense is incredible. Like, one of the best lineups in baseball. Shane Baz is a great addition. So I love the pick. I agree. I think they're a really fun team.
Yeah, well, with that, that's all for now. We'll see what happens in terms of it. Sorry about the noise outside, but we'll see what happens in terms of big moves. But yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comment section. Joey, we should be back next week, right? So looking forward to that one as well. But all right, that will be the new episode of Roundtable Rundown. So thank you guys.